Welcome to Disrupt to Shift, transforming and empowering the human spirit. Our mission is to inspire change, push boundaries, and lead a journey towards fearless healing and wholeness. Our hosts are Darlene Brown, Dan Gilman, Knut Birch, Deidre Boswell, Michael Dale Campbell, and Janine Witcher.
This is Knut Birch. Welcome to Disrupt to Shift. We're glad you've tuned in to listen to a transformative presentation this evening with our special guest. With me in the studio is Michael Dale Campbell. Michael?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, or good morning, whenever you're watching. This is Disrupt to Shift, and I am thrilled to be here every single time we have an opportunity to share nuggets with you. And today, I'm even more so excited because our guest today is someone that I've known for, a long time, for 17 years or so. And we've done a lot of wonderful discussions, transformative discussions together. And today, she's going to enlighten us on some things that she's been able to accomplish in her life in the last few years that will drive you to success in your own life. I'd like to welcome this evening, Renee Maxfield.
Good evening, everybody.
You're welcome, Renee.
Nice to meet you.
Glad to have you. You've been so excited about this.
It's a wonderful opportunity today to have you on the show, Renee. We are just really about disrupting the norm to shift into something that's way, way better than the norm in your life. And I'm going to ask you a very pointed question here.
Okay.
What is that experience like when you actually disrupt and shift into something better? How does it feel?
Expansive.
Okay.
It's expansive in that you become the newer, better version of yourself. You have the power to 10 times who you are in all regards. And it's expansive, it's thrilling, it's an adventure.
Wow. So it's adventure, it's thrilling, it's expansive. That's what I heard. And so I know that you have a lot of stories to tell, and perhaps it might be good for our audience to understand the disruption that you went through. And I remember in many of our conversations that we had over the years that you had some
struggling,
terrible events in your life.
Yes, very much so.
Events that made you rethink life.
Yes, very much so.
What did it start like?
There was a couple different things. There was a family event related to a business, but more importantly, there was a tremendous loss in my husband and I's business. We had a property manager that ended up doing some very untoward things and caused us to lose the better part of a business that we had spent, oh my gosh, a decade and a half, blood, sweat, and tears building, and it was our future. And all of a sudden, just thrown into chaos. And 5 years went by of just trying to keep our heads above water, lost a lot of property. We were property owners in a university town, and pretty much lost everything that we had built so many years together. And so all of a sudden you wake up one day and everything that you've worked so hard for is gone, and you're trying to assimilate that and trying to figure out what's next when you finally came out the other side of that. And it was terribly disorienting, painful, excruciating time period.
Wow. So from a series, Knut, you can relate to this, right?
Wow.
Does this sound familiar in some way?
I can relate to the industry, the industry. I pray that while I really empathize, that I will never have to experience the ultimate.
Yes.
But it sounds like it was something very gut-wrenching. I mean, very extremely disturbing and life-changing.
Yeah, traumatic, really. It was a whirlwind, loss, everything. Yes, very much so.
Wow.
Wow.
So
because
Yeah, go ahead, Knut, please.
I said because when you're in the position that you previously were, you have a sense of security because you know that this is one of the asset classes that is most secure,
Yes.
you know, and guaranteed to bring long-term, you know, profit, you know,
Yes.
and to just as it appears overnight to lose that. I mean, I would be surprised if you didn't end up in the hospital.
It was every low that you can imagine. For 5 years, it took 5 years to come out the other side of it, and then you find yourself older than you were when you went into this time period. And as I alluded to, there was other things that had come the period before that. So really a decade of my life all of a sudden evaporated. All of my 40s were gone in a heartbeat. And I had been shooting for, had worked very hard to be able to, had goals, you know, wanted to retire at 42, and here now I'm 50. And all the things that you had planned for were now kind of up in smoke. And you're reeling and trying to just move forward. And it changes you. Honestly, it changes you, and it makes you prioritize you know, whatever is important to you. It how do I want to say, kind of forces that reckoning with yourself as to what really matters to you most. You realize time is ticking. You don't have as many years as you thought you had before. You'd invested decades into something and now it was gone. And who do you want to be? What matters to you most? What's your priority now? And so you have to come at life. I had to come at life differently than I had before. And you had to really focus on what mattered to you most. And before you just went on youth and enthusiasm and a boundless supply of energy, and you didn't have quite those things anymore, and you'd been knocked pretty good.
Wow. So
well, here you are now.
Yeah,
That means you have recovered some, and you're smiling, you're all cheery, looking bubbly, you know. So talk about that, you know, how you bottomed out, and then I guess you were on your back, so you just had to look up.
Yes, well, I'm 57 now, so there's been a few years that have passed in the interim. So it was it's a very bumpy process, right? As you try to sort out the rubble of your life and figure out what matters to you, and really the time is shorter now. As far as I look at it. And so you're trying to sort your way through this and get to the other side and pick up a life and move on with it and make something of it despite that. To not be drugged down into despair, to set new intentions, to set new goals, a new focus, have a way of looking at life that's productive for yourself and your family.
And if I might piggyback on a word that I know is one of your favorite words. And I think the plan that you had with the properties was to really give you freedom so you could do the things you wanted.
Yes, absolutely. And here all of a sudden, all that was gone. It had evaporated. And so then you're trying to make up time and figure out how to get that freedom back, because it's the ultimate value to me. And what that means to me personally is to be able to do what I want, when I want to do, contribute in the way that I want to, have time freedom, activity freedom, all of those kind of things. And that became my number one value before you could care about a lot of things. And suddenly you realize that your number one value was the thing that you had to really lead with.
Wow. And so you've been living your life targeting freedom.
Yes.
As the thing that you wanted. So now your freedom is sucked out completely. There's no oxygen left to the freedom.
No, and there hadn't been for a decade.
What did you do? What was that first step you took toward clarifying, understanding the new dynamic in your life?
I would say one of the biggest things is being very crystal clear about the things that do matter to you, having the focus. Like I said, you can't be all over the board like you were when you were younger. You had all of these grand plans, all these incredible ideas, and you ran on sheer momentum and enthusiasm. And now at this point, it's what really matters to you. And of course, I wish I could go back and revisit this for the preceding 20, 30 years of my life, but it's to have the laser focus on your values, the vision that you have for yourself, the plan that you're going to get there, how to be very leveraged in everything that you do so that everything that you're working on actually counts, that it matters.
Wow. So how did you go about that? Well, I mean,
it's been a process. It's been a muddling through. Nobody hands us this in high school or college or anywhere else, how to do that. But the first was
The School of Hard Knocks.
Yes, the School of Hard Knocks, without a doubt. A lot of reading, a lot of studying, a lot of introspection. And I think clarifying values was obviously the first one, because once you have that identified, you know what matters to you most. And there's a lot of different ways you can express that value. In my case, freedom, there's a lot of ways you can express that. So once you have that pinned down, there's a lot of ways to satisfy that. There's a lot of ways to be successful at that. And really the biggest thing I've done is to have that focus on, like, now I'm down to the point where it's the top three things. What are the top three things that are going on in my, that matter the most, that will contribute to my life the most, and making sure that those happen first every single day. And so I keep a list. It's like, if I get these things accomplished each day, I've won the day, and I try to get those done very first thing in the day, so that you get that momentum from succeeding.
Mm-hmm. So talk a little bit about, because I want our audience to write that down. I mean, those who are watching right now, I want you folks to write this down. 3 things that you're focusing on that are vital and essential toward the fulfillment of the value that you, dear handle most, that you want for your life to be manifested in your life.
Yes.
You chose freedom. You're looking at 3 things.
So freedom is the top value.
Right.
And then under that, in my case, just as an example, is fitness. And so that's fitness, wellness, health, that kind of thing is the top, because if you don't have that if you don't have foundational things in place, you have nothing. And so if you don't have that one first, you have nothing else. You can't do anything else that's in your dreams. The second one for me is financial, obviously. Having had that, there is no 401k. My 401k is gone. And the 401k that I built. And then for me, travel and adventure, very much tied into freedom, right? So have freedom of the ability to do the things you want in the health, the freedom of financial to be able to go and do what you want when you want to do it, and not be constrained by not having the funds and the financial security to do that. And then the last one for me is adventure. Give me a motorcycle. Let's go.
Oh, wow.
Well, what I'm hearing there, Renee, is that the freedom was not an end in itself.
No, it's almost an organizing principle. I mean, obviously I have other values, but for the purpose of this conversation, freedom's the number one. I can't shake that if I wanted to. Even during those 10 years, it was always playing in the background. And Michael was there through all of this. He was watching from the sidelines, helping me, coaching me, encouraging me at different points. And he saw that no matter how hard my days were, and some of them, it was just painful for so long, but still, because you had that leading value, in my case, I have many values, but that's the top one. That one always shone through. That was the one that was always keeping me moving, despite the pain you were in the moment. You were always shooting for that thing. For me, freedom. And so you continuously did everything you were doing for that purpose, to ultimately get back to that place again, because you can't shake it. You can't shake those values. You can try to deny them. You can try to climb the wrong ladder. You can try to fulfill somebody else's dream, but there's always that thing that's nagging at you, and you won't have peace until you actually start living that.
Well, I think our audience is going to be interested in adventure. I'd like to start there, because as one of as one of the people that I have seen blossom over time. You have done some incredible things. I mean,
And
things that
if you
people
remember, Michael, it
yes,
didn't start this way. I always tell people this because some people tend to think you have how they see you now is how you've always been.
yeah,
And that is absolutely not the case. I've grown into this person. I have, as I always say to everybody, a lot of social anxiety in general. And nobody would guess that. I know nobody would guess that, but this is not where I started. This is where I'm at now. And because I grew into this person over time, because the intention was there. If you have a lot of anxiety, you don't have freedom either. So see, everything ties back to that, back to those primary values that you hold for yourself.
So tell us a little bit about adventure. What have you done that verifies that you have had freedom?
Okay. Can I kick
one of the
just one? Okay. Holy cow. Can I just do a quickie list?
Okay, sure.
Okay. I learned to ride a motorcycle at 52 years old. I'd only ridden it for 800 miles when I bought a motorcycle 2,300 miles away from home, rode it by myself in early spring, late winter, across the entire country, across the Rocky Mountains by myself. It took me 16 days to do it. I have learned to ride a dirt bike at 53 years old. I'm a pretty good dirt bike rider at 57 years old. I have ridden a motorcycle across the Trans-America Trail, a dirt bike the country. It took me 30 days to do it. I have ridden I've ridden that bike down into Mexico for months. I'm about to head to Central America for a couple of months on the bike. I have hiked parts of the Tahoe Rim Trail. I mean, there's other things besides motorcycles because I stretched myself. I started out being afraid to drive my truck across the country. It was so anxiety producing. And now I've gone from that all the way to these kind of things that I do on a very, very regular basis.
Wow. Renee, are you saying that you're doing all of these things and still keep a husband?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I mean, perhaps if I were,
I have a tremendous amount of support,
and you might have rushed back to give you CPR, you know, in the hospital or something, because I don't know how, but it's really impressive.
Yes, and there's so many things like that. I can't tell you how many things that I've done like that. I was terrified to go hike out in the woods by myself. I do that regularly now. I'm trying to think. In January I went to where was it, Michael? Colombia, not a city, the state of the country of Cartagena, Colombia, all by myself for 2 weeks. So I'm constantly stretching myself, and Michael's well aware of, I have a concept of calling itty bitty baby stepping into your big, hairy, audacious goals. And so I started out here, I'm here, and I continue to grow, but the way that I do that is in tiny steps that allow me to incrementally keep moving into that person that I want to be, that is guided by the values that I hold for myself.
Wow.
So you're saying then that your disruption or the disrupting that you undertake is not something that comes overnight.
No, absolutely not. This has been a progression and a kindness to myself to gently move into those things. And I do this very slowly. It seems very slowly. There's a concept called Kaizen. It's doing something small, but repeatedly until something is a habit for you. So I've done things like I go hiking just 1 mile in the woods where there's a lot of people hiking. That's how I started doing that, so that I felt really, really comfortable, and did it over and over and over and over again. When I first started learning to ride the motorcycle, I had a tiny little motorcycle and I rode it around my neighborhood here for hours. I never left the tiny little loop in my neighborhood until I was comfortable and actually bored with that, until I was ready to branch out just a little lot further, just literally up onto the mountain. And then I'd run the road up there, back and forth, back and forth. That's how I step into these tremendous changes that I've made for myself, going from someone who is frightened to literally drive a car across the whole country to driving a motorcycle across the whole thing and riding into Mexico.
Wow. So you know what that is saying to our audience is that uh, it, in order to have that slight edge, you just
Yes.
need to take incremental steps, one
Yes.
step at a time. You don't have to jump in and get it all.
No. And
Just
it's
take incremental,
yes.
and it gives you the slight edge.
The compounding effect of that is tremendous. In the last 7 years, the things I've done, I could have never dreamed I would do. I just shocked at the things that I've been able to accomplish just by taking that approach into life, knowing my values, having 3 areas of my life that answer that, and then drilling down in each of those. So freedom, finances, adventure, and health, and drilling down in those. So on the adventure part of it is anything that fulfills that adventure itch for me, and just then baby stepping my way into each of those things. And when I say I ride a dirt bike, I ride a dirt bike. I'm talking like
The real dirt.
climbing mountains and rocks and roots and ruts and riding through the woods and
the rugged terrains.
yes, and having the time of my life. And so this also kind of ties back to the things that you think are the worst things have embedded in them gold. They really do. I wouldn't have guessed that while I was going through all that pain that it would propel me to dig deeper, look at the things that mattered the most to me, and go all in on those things.
So that is so amazing. But one of the things that I think our audience would also like to know, at the point where you lost everything, what was one of the things that you just found yourself doing? And then as you were doing that so-called menial task or rudimentary tasks, you were also preparing for your freedom. And I want to give some insight to the audience on what that was like for you as you were working for a well-known company, an international company. You found something to do there. But even while you were there, the spirit that was driving you made you do some unusual things. Could you let our audience in on some of that? I remember lists and things that you were focusing on. Talk a little bit about
always touching. Those were always the touchstones. So even though you had these hard days where I remember one of the things, it took weeks to months to just sort out cable boxes from all of our tenants and figure out who had what cable box to get them back and get them back to the cable company. It took just this untold amount of time and energy. And while you were muddling through this mundane, horrible, absurd kind of tasks, at the same time, you still kept your visions in the fore of your mind, the things that would draw you forward, like a beacon. You talk about a lighthouse. I call it the North Star. There's these things that draw you forward that you keep in touch with, so you don't get lost in the despair of when you're in the weeds of your life.
Wow.
Well, they always say that if you did it once, you could do it again. So what was part of your mindset when you were, in the doldrums, and you were trying to figure out how where you go from here?
That goes to philosophy, I think, from the standpoint of I have a certain philosophy that I live by, which is we are blessed to be here beyond measure. I call it the existential lottery ticket. We all won the existential lottery ticket. We're here. There's I look at it from 2 standpoints. Left or right, 1 month with your parents, you wouldn't be here. Somebody else would be here. Correct? And correct. And the other one is Michael and I were just talking about this the other day. Everybody since the beginning of time had to survive wars, and all your ancestors had to survive wars and famines and
Diseases.
displacement, diseases, and everything, for you to be standing here right now and to waste both of those gifts, to me, is the greatest offense to being here, that you are not respecting that gift if you don't take it seriously. And so these things happen. These things happen to everyone. I would say the other thing that I did during this time was really always was looking for perspective. That in the middle of all of that we were going through at that time, I was always looking for perspective. There was food on the table. There was a roof over my head. There were always people that, no matter how bad it got, if I ended up homeless, there would be a place to land, because there was people who loved us, who cared about us, who would support us and hold us up during that time. And so perspective was something, as you're going, we all go through tough times. The more I talk to people, the more you peek behind the curtain of other people's lives, and people are kind and generous enough to share those intimate things with me because I share mine. You see everybody struggles with something. Everybody has heartache. Everybody has pain behind this facade that we keep up just to maybe keep ourselves going, whatever reason we do that. But there's perspective there, that we are blessed beyond measure for a multitude of reasons. And if you can reach for the gratitude, even in the hardest of those moments, it's a gift. It's an absolute gift to be able to do that. And then to stand on the other side of it, the lovely thing about standing on the other side of it is you know how resilient you are. You know how tough you are. You know you can weather some seriously tough times and still come out the other side and still be smiling.
So my question is, somebody right now that's watching this show is actually working a 9-to-5, a job,
Yes.
a shift.
Mm-hmm.
They have this dream that's lurking in the back of their mind, and they would love to break through. What actions did you take while you were working? Because you had to go back and get some kind of source of income.
Yes.
What were some of the mechanisms, the systems that you used to be able to stay focused and make progress, even though you're under the watchful eye of an employer?
Yes.
Watching every single move. How did you do that?
It was these same things that we're talking about. So I ended up at the tail end of this, and then we had COVID. And I had just started, okay, let's look for work, and nobody's hiring. It was at the beginning when nobody was hiring. There was no extra jobs. And so I ended up at a Amazon warehouse distribution center here, and 10-hour days, exhausting physical days. I am not a spring chicken anymore. Talk about no freedom. I'm looking at the mountains that I love outside this tiny window on the 3rd floor. And I would leave every single night sobbing in my car before I'd go home. I was that distraught at the lack of freedom. And that, though, helped drive me. When you feel like you're stuck, if you have these things that we've already talked about, the values that you hold most dear, the expression of those values, those 3 expressions of those values that are the most leveraged for you, you hold those out in front of yourself. I would literally, so it's like, I've got to get out of here. I've got to do something. And so I started actually trading the stock market, something I'd learned years before, but hadn't touched in, oh my gosh, over a decade. And I would literally, as I was in my car going into this job that I just despised, I was placing an order on my cell phone, and you had to be everywhere within a certain amount of time. I would run through the front door, clock in, I would run to the restroom, I would sit on the little, I would sit there in the stall, and I would check my orders, and I would then race across the entire warehouse so I would be where I needed to be, because I wanted to figure out some way to get my freedom back. And so this was the method I chose. If it hadn't worked, I would have done something else and something else and something else until I got back to the expression of that value for myself. And it didn't matter how tired I was. It was the number one job. And at that time, it was winnowed down to 1 out of the 3 things. The other 2 had to wait. Everything else sat on hold for the most part. Well, I put all my energy, all of my excess energy, and there wasn't a whole lot. Every ounce of it went to the one thing that mattered most, that was the most leverage, that would move me in the direction of my dreams, my values, above all else. Everything else went by the wayside. Everything, phone calls, Facebook, friends, adventure, everything went by the wayside to what do you want to say? Leverage my way up,
Yeah.
leapfrog my way into a new position in my life. And so all of those things that I described earlier, the things that I've done in the last several years since that time period, the last 3 years, I've had a lot of freedom and a lot of fun and a lot of adventure. And now I'm just working on the next iteration of that in those 3 same areas with that value guiding me all the way.
So I know that you've done that. That is amazing. And thank you for sharing that, because what I want our audience to really capture is that you still took care of what you needed to do to keep food on the table, keep the roof over your head, but you didn't let 10-hour days and your exhaustion stop you from doing the other thing that would take you closer to the freedom and the adventure that you wanted. And that's huge when we talk about disrupting the norm.
Yes.
Shift, right?
Yes.
That's a great thing.
And it all compounds. Even a 1% improvement over 365 days is 365%, but compounded even bigger than that. Each step I would take was added to the previous one and the previous one. And then you had additional insights, and from each new vantage point, you could see more options to move yourself to where you wanted to go. Wow. And so life is tremendously different than it was, 13 years ago and even 3 years ago. I can't even believe the person I've grown into, and I've become more intentional about it now that like I said, it was, just banging about, reading books, listening to podcasts, YouTube videos, whatever, until I now have a more pointed approach to all of this. And I hold that in front of me every day, every single day.
Wow. So I want you to touch on your health, because you mentioned health as one of the things that is very important and dear to you, one of the values. Tell us a little bit about the struggle, because everybody now will see you and say, oh, yeah, she did all this. Well, how easy was it, first of all? How difficult was it? And what did you start from? What caused this kind of outlook? And how did you move into this process of making some huge accomplishments here too? I understand you lost like 22
pounds somewhere in most of it was 4 or 5 months. So part of the freedom thing and the traveling thing was I was just enjoying eating. And all of a sudden I one day step on the scale and you couldn't hide much longer that you didn't feel comfortable in your clothes. And it was actually around this year, 2023. And it was, okay, this is too much. And I set for myself the 3 goals and the 3 areas for myself. And one is always a focus. The other 2 are I'm limping them along as best I can with whatever time I can, but one is the primary. And so in January, it was health, obviously losing some weight and starting to work out again and making better food choices was the first one. And so I came across 75 Hard at the time, which it was a neat way for me to structure it, but whatever works for you, you just pick something that you can stick with. And that's in all of these endeavors. If you every day do the main things as the main things first before anything else happens, you will make progress. You'll make distinctions. It's not starting something, it's being consistent that produces results. And so I actually did 22 pounds while I've been on the road most of the year. I lost 22 pounds, and it was literally, I kept it as simple as I needed to. I cut out I cut out anything that was a big sugar hit. I didn't go searching out every last ounce of sugar. I drank a gallon of water. I worked out twice, 45 minutes each. And what was else? Water. I read 10 pages. This is the challenge. I read 10 pages and I took a progress picture. That's it. And I consistently did those 5 things every single day. Day in, day out, it didn't matter where I was on the road, because this structures your life. When you pick these leverage things, it structures your life. So it didn't matter if I knew I was going to be on the road driving 12 hours up to my parents' house in Michigan. I got the workout done at 5 in the morning. I had it planned out how I was going to actually accomplish those things so that I never missed a beat. So that's where the success accrues, is because you do it every single day. And this has been just mind blowing for me, eye opening. I've got an entrepreneur's brain who wants to do 20 things all at the same time. And I'm finding picking those 3 things and staying consistent with the activities that will generate the most return. Not all the peripheral things. We all want to do the things that are fun or easy or comfortable, but it's the things that'll move the needle the most are the things that if you just do those day after day after day, you'll hit your target. And so it was probably about 4 or 5 months is all, and I lost 22 pounds. And it's like, and then all of a sudden I'm walking, and all of a sudden I'm seeing myself differently. I'm experiencing myself differently. I'm making different food choices. It's not perfect, but it's the next iteration. And so then I just take that and leverage it into the next thing. So now I'm rucking, which doesn't involve any extra energy, time, effort. I just throw weight on my back now. And I can take that when I go to Central America or whatever else I do, I can keep those habits going because it's creating those habits that are the most leveraged, that pay the dividends. They're the things that actually get the results that you're looking for. So that was the first part of the year. The second part of the year is I wanted to become a better rider. So I took 2 months to just ride and ride and ride and ride. And I more than doubled my ability. I'm just in shock at the skill level I have. And it doesn't matter what it is for you. We all have skills that are would up level us in our life. And it's taking that. And so I could just keep the health aspect of it going along. And then the riding was the next, in that adventure category, was the next thing that I focused on and just knocked it out. And it's like, wow, this is beautiful. I'm much better at this thing. And then now at this time of the year, I've been working on advancing my skills in trading. So on the financial end of things, and making big headway on that. And so I've got one main one at any given time. The other 2 get whatever leftover time in bandwidth I have mentally. And then I go play.
Renee, it is so inspiring to listen to you. I am hearing drive. I'm hearing resilience. I'm hearing discipline. What are the primary things? Because many individuals experience what you've experienced, and even far less than what you've experienced in terms of the bad things that happened with your business, and they never recover. They end up with some serious psychological problems. Some even dead.
No, absolutely, health issues.
What is there something you think that you have that sets you apart? That gives you that bounce so that you can bounce back like you have?
Yeah, I think it really is self-awareness. There is something, Michael and I talk about this all the time. We call it the fingerprint of God, because I don't know where it comes from. We all have something in us that's this unique gift that wants to be expressed. We all have to put food on the table. We all have to make a living. We all have those things that we need to accomplish in life. But there's something that's in each of us that's yearning to be expressed. And if you tap into that, you have kind of an extra superpower. It's the thing that keeps you moving when everything is hard. Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey. It's tapping into something like that. It's knowing that you're here, believing that you're here for something bigger than just mucking about. Like I alluded to, the gift that we're here in the first place, but then we all have this unique gift within ourselves. You can feel it. There's something, it just keeps nagging at you to be expressed. And if you can tap into that and be the hero in your own story, you can rise again. We've all watched, whatever it is, The Lion King, this is the story of all times. the person that's called to action, that's reluctant, doesn't want to. I don't want to do that. The Lord of the Rings, so many stories are this hero's journey of you're called to action and you don't want to, but something in you compels you to rise to that challenge, and you change as a result of that. You become the person, the next iteration of the person you were meant to become because of that. I wouldn't have guessed that there was gifts in all this pain. I would never have guessed this in a million years, but I get to stand on the other side of it. And if you keep moving, you get to stand on the other side of it and look back and go, okay, there are gifts in this. I grew as a person. There were things that were holding me back in that previous iteration of life, and my own thinking, relationships, businesses that maybe didn't fit anymore, things like that. And there was gifts as you look back at that, but you had to go through that pain and the trial and the fight and the journey to get to the other side of that.
Wow. So I would like to go back a little bit to the 75 hard, because you mentioned that really quickly. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if everyone in our audience will actually know what that is. Yes. But if you could tell us a little bit more about that, because the 75 is an important number in that.
Yes. So Andy Frisella, you can look him up at andyfrisella.com. If you don't like naughty words, you won't like listening to him. So don't do that. But the challenge, he put it together is really about mental discipline. You'll see the results. I have before and after pictures that you can see the outward manifestation of that discipline. Mm-hmm. But it's the internal that changes. In 75 days, you do these 5 things that I said. You take a progress picture, drink a gallon of water, something I hate. I can't stand water. And now I drink water all the time. I'm a gallon of water a day. Crazy. 2 different workouts for 45 minutes. And what's the last one?
And you're reading the book?
Reading 10 pages, nonfiction, something that wrenches your mind. And it's the discipline that's created out of that. And like I said, to win the day, he talks about winning the day. If you get those 5 things done, you'll find your inner discipline. And it doesn't matter what thing that you're wanting to do. You have to have that discipline that even on a day and when he structured it in such a way so that it is a little painful. Your workouts, one of them has to be outside. Rain. I have literally walked through the rain with cars splashing water up to my waist to get my outdoor workout in. It's supposed to be painful so that you see what you're made of. You're actually made of a whole lot more than you think you are. And it only is this much different than you think. You think you have none of that grit, and it's only this much. I was shocked at how little it takes to demonstrate to yourself that you have far more grit than you ever could imagine, just by doing something consistently for 75 days. Whatever it is, pick it. I don't even care. Pick something that's hard for you and go do it for 75 days. No matter what, no matter if there's a family wedding, a family funeral, it didn't matter. I've done it, and I can't tell you how many states and countries. I kept that 75 hard going, and I still keep it going. There's different phases of it. So I've done another 30 days and another 30 days, and I've got one more to do at the end of the year to do a whole year of his 75 hard year program. But the whole point is discipline. If you can keep yourself doing the same thing day in and day out, when you get bored, when you're tired, when things come up unexpected, there's stories of people out tromping around their neighborhood, walking at 10 o'clock at night, drinking water because they got off track, and they're drinking. There was one night where I was drinking water till 11 o'clock at night. I knew I was going to be going to the restroom all night long. It's like, you're not ticking that box, girl. You're getting it done. I don't care. You're not failing now. And so you get momentum from these things as well.
And the way that program is designed, if you miss a day or any
you start over.
You start the 75 days over again.
All over again. And you don't want to do that. and the other is, and choose a diet. That was the other one. And so I chose one that was attainable for me, but there's no cheat meals and there's no alcohol. And so these things, and for me, it was sugar was the big thing that I took out of my diet. And, I've been to parties, I've been to friends' houses, there's been holidays, and I stayed with it. One little side note, I wrote a note down here, something about, 100%, I forget who said it, a Harvard professor. Sorry, I don't have the attribution, but 100% is easier than 98%. And that's what I found on this. I didn't have to say no to a cookie, a candy bar, a cupcake, waffles, pancakes, a drink, nothing for 75 days. It was all no. It was just no. I made one decision once. It was 100%. I didn't have to make that decision 1,000 times over that 75 days. 100% was easier than 98%. And I had no clue that's the case. Just beautiful.
Yeah, that's Clayton Christensen, right?
Ah, yes, that is it. You got it right, Michael. Nice job. Yes, that's who it is.
100% is easier than 98%, and that eliminates the internal conflict when you get to have to make those little, maybe I should this time and maybe not, right?
Yes, and decision fatigue. And you don't have any place when you're trying to be disciplined for decision fatigue. You just don't. And the other thing I did during this whole time period was I filled my mind with good content. Twice a day, I was walking 45 minutes a day, and I would fill my brain. I would turn on my YouTube. I'd find a podcast from somebody that was inspired, and I was not filling my mind with negativity, news, all of that horrific kind of stuff. I was filling it with positive thoughts that expanded my thinking, just like that kind of thing, that 100% is easier than 98%. I was constantly filling, and still am, it's a habit now, to constantly fill my mind with better thoughts than the thoughts that I had before. And you have that when you read 10 pages of nonfiction a day. You pick up a book and you read that thing from beginning to end. I've never finished a book before. I always get about 3/4 of the way through and I'm done. And because of the challenge, I've read countless books, beginning to end, every last page, every last word. And it develops your mind. All of this is developing you as a human being to be the best version of you going forward. We all struggle.
Wow.
But who do you want to be?
Yeah, that's a really vital question. Who do you wish to be?
And the question that would follow that one is, are you prepared to do what it takes to become what you want to be?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, the baby steps.
You were prepared, and you still are prepared. You're doing whatever it takes to become that version of yourself that you aspire to.
And then when you have the direct results, the cause and effect, it's very reinforcing. It's like, I did that. I did that thing. Now, what do I want to do? Now, what do I want to focus on and put my attention towards and see the results? And in that's been a big shocker for me, how blisteringly fast when you're not moving. This has historically been one of my downfalls, is trying to move 10 things forward by centimeters instead of moving one main thing and 2 other things forward by feet. You make headway that way. You actually see and feel and experience that progress, and it makes you want more. So you get dopamine hit all day long that reinforces, keep going. You did that. You succeeded at that. What else can I do? It's a thrill. It's a completely different experience of life for me because I've done it both ways.
Wow. There are 2 concepts I would like for you to touch, Renee, and front-loading success. And you always talk about the big rocks.
Yes. And people talk about this. Yes.
I like that metaphor. And I'd love for you to touch on that for our audience, because it really gives us a nice visual of prioritization. How do we go about a day or a week or a month and actually get those main things done? Tell us a little bit more about that.
So this is this funnel kind of thing, right? Okay, you've got your values, you've got your top 3 expressions of that value. You're drilling down into the one main thing that you're doing, the main one, and then the other 2 wherever you have space for that. But the big rocks are, if you take a jar and you put in all the little stuff. I've got to make this phone call, and I've got to get a doctor's appointment, and I got to call my mother, and I've got to all those hundreds of little things, and you do those first. The jar's full of the little things. Not that your mother's small, a small thing, but you put in all of these other things. I got to vacuum. I've got to all these little tasks that don't have the leverage towards your big dreams and not towards the expression of your values, right? you want to flip that. You want to put the big rocks in first. And that's what I talk about, winning the day. Whatever is the most leveraged things that you decide that you're going to do day in and day out, there will be expressions of this values and your priorities within that value, those values. You put those big rocks in first. You make sure those happen. Like I said, there's times when I've taken walks in the wee hours of the night and the wee hours of the morning, because those are the things that you've established are the most leveraged things to work your way up, that ultimately are expression of your values. And so you put those big rocks in first. All the other stuff will filter around it. And I've heard this concept forever and ever. Now I know it, because I literally have a checklist on a journal. That's all I do. I have a page, and every day I check off the main things. This is the only things I'm doing day in and day out, because these are the most leveraged things I could possibly do for myself and my future self, and to 10 times myself.
Yeah, we're going to get to the 10X in just a second, because we have just a few more minutes. But I want to go back to that idea for somebody who is actually working, has to show up at work for now.
Yes.
They still need to have a similar system, right?
Yes.
Where those, so what advice
So outside of the work hours, how do you put those big pieces in next? Do I have to get up a little earlier so that I can do the work, do a workout? If fitness is your thing, one of your main things, how do I get this done? I get up earlier, and it's tied into that ultimate value for yourself. So you can see why it's important. It's not just going through the grind of, oh gosh, I've got a workout to do today. It's my freedom. For me, it's tied to, I get to ride a dirt bike when I'm 65 years old. So I've tied it to the things, all are tied together. These are all important to me. So I can't sit around and not take care of my body, because then I won't get to do the other things I want to do. So then all of a sudden, getting up at 5, I'm not a morning person. This morning I was up at 5 a.m. to do something that it was meaningful. Because it was tied to my values. It was tied to my main objectives. And so you can see the connection very clearly. So you do the things you need to do. So the big rocks, where do they go? Where do I have space for this? Do I need to cut out? What do I need to cut out that is no value or low value to me? Am I spending a lot of time on social media? Am I spending a lot of time watching TV? Am I spending a lot of time, cruising the internet that has no value? How is that tied to my future self? It's not. Get rid of those things, put in the big rocks of, I'm going to work out, I'm going to practice a new skill set, whatever it is that you've determined is the highly leveraged activities that if you did day in and day out, you would get better at, that you would improve that area of your life.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. I want to ask this last question, and Canute, feel free to jump in. Renee mentioned just a few minutes ago, when we were getting started, she mentioned something phenomenal that I think our audience should really catch. And that's a 10X upgrade in both your identity and your life. A 10X upgrade. Tell us what that means, and perhaps how to go about doing it.
Beautiful. So it comes from a book. It's from Dan Kennedy, and who's the other author, Michael? You look that up. If you can look that up, it's the concept. Who's that?
Grant Cardone.
Yes. Is that no? That's not who it is.
Dan Sullivan and Dr. somebody else. I don't remember.
Yes. It's not at the top of my head. But anyway, 10X is easier than 2X. Yes. And the whole concept behind it is if you just try to do incremental improvements. So this kind of goes a little counter to my itty bitty baby stepping into something, but setting this for yourself, then you itty bitty baby step your way into it, is how I look at it. What is the approach? How do I, if I want to 2X my life, it's just going to be incremental improvements to my life. I'm going to make my business. I'm going to make $10,000 more this year. I'm going to improve my business by 10%. That's incremental. That's 2 times better. 10 times is I was making $50,000 last year. I'm going to make $500,000 this year. The key concept of that is you can't. It cuts out all the clutter. There's only a couple of ways that you can get to something that's that much bigger for yourself. You can't poke around the edges of it. You have to do something very different. There's only a few paths to get you from where you are to something 10 times better than that.
Hmm.
Is that
So-
yes? This is a fascinating concept. So within that, then I itty bitty baby step myself to that. I'm taking the leveraged actions that I can grow into, create as a habit, and then keep growing. But it's along a path, the one of one or two paths that'll allow me to do that. So if I wanted to go from $50,000 income to $500,000 income, I can't work more hours, right? You don't have enough hours in your life, much less in a week, to go to 10 times your income by working more hours per hour. So you have to take another path to that. And so it forces you into the one or two paths that will allow you to execute on a 10 times improvement.
Wow.
Hmm. So,
And then once you know what that path is, now itty bitty baby step your way into it.
Very interesting. And what I'm hearing here also is that you, in order to 10x, you cannot be the same person you were when you were 1x. If you want to-
Exactly. So this is something else you have to do
10
too.
seconds. It's 10 seconds. Tell us about it.
In 10 seconds, you have to grow yourself too. There's only there's only a certain person that can execute that certain path, and you have to develop yourself to be that person who can take that path. And so this means you have to be even more focused. You can't do everything. You have to put your big rocks in first.
That means disrupt. Disrupt
You bet.
what's going on, and you got to do that in order to shift. Wow.
Yes.
For some people, it's a bigger disruption, you know.
Yeah, that's right.
But in any case, for everyone, it is that consistency also that, you know, and that daring that you need to get you to where.
And dreaming that way. Yes, absolutely. Having a vision for yourself.
Well, Renee, and we want to thank you so very much for this wonderful experience that you provided for. This has been a great exposure to the disrupt concept, to move into that next level of life for oneself, to 10x their identity and their life. And we just really want to thank you so much for the inspiration that you provided for us and for our audience today.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Canute, for having me. I enjoyed this so much.
This transformative journey would not be possible without the generous support of our sponsors. Their belief in the power of disruption and their commitment to fostering innovation have been instrumental in bringing these stories to light. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to all the sponsors for joining us in the mission to inspire change and drive progress. To be a potential sponsor, let's collaborate to keep this important conversation going. Together, we can all make a difference.